Hey, homeowners. Today we're going to be talking about how to protect your basement from severe weather. We're going to show you a couple of things to consider if you're going to have a severe storm and you're worried about your basement. Three items that we want to explore today. One of them is going to be checking your gutters and your downspouts, as well as inspecting the grading. This is where the soil meets your home. And then the third thing we'll discuss today is your professional assessment. So, downspouts, if there's anything that's the most critical thing as far as keeping water out of your basement, it is probably the downspouts. There is an incredible amount of water that comes off the roof during these heavy storms. And you'll notice in the picture here that sometimes our landscaper or our grandkids or whoever's mowing our yard, you can see the weed eater damage to the downspout. In the top right picture, you can actually see that the gutters come loose from the house. And then the bottom right picture, we see more weed eater damage on a different gutter, same house. Here you're gonna see this is actually a downspout, and what happened is that whoever put this drainage work in, they actually curved the downspout and the soil has covered up the opening, but they actually curved the pipe up in order to get some flow, which is contrary to what we're trying to do. So this drainage pipe is in essence doing a smile, and the water sits here and it backflows near the house, and you'll often see like the top right hand picture where it washes the soil away at the gutter downspout because the water's not getting away from the house. We like to go minimum at 10 foot away from the house, and we like to use hard, rigid PVC when we're doing our discharge lines here at Foundation Solutions Group. Something else you see in the bottom right hand picture, there's a lot going on. This is actually a squirrel that did damage to the downspout, and they're notorious for eating that and making access. They want to get the nuts that are stored in the gutter. So on your downspouts, you're going to want to look for restrictions. This big picture here in the three is actually showing you it's kind of contrary to good flow. The more bends you have in your pipe, the less flow that you're going to have. It restricts the flow of the gutter. And then in the top right and the bottom right, you can actually see saplings and seedlings growing in the bottom right hand corner. In the top right hand corner, you're going to see the gutter nail and you see damage where maybe a tree has hit the gutter. So that area of the gutter is going to probably have overflow, and then you're going to look below and you're going to have that water falling right next to your house. And so that's the whole goal of these downspouts, is to get that water volume that's coming out of that gutter, which it can be on a moderate rain, maybe a heavy rain, about 600 gallons per hour on 1,000 square foot. So that's a significant amount of water volume. This can kind of be both things that we're talking about, checking your downspouts and the grade. And if you'll notice that they kind of just attach this downspout to an elbow, and you'll see that the discharge line is actually going up. So what happens is that water backflows and it's still coming out right by the house. So there's no shortcut to you when you're doing your discharge lines. You have to do it hard, and it's better to get one right than it is to get them all halfway right. Just take your time, schedule it on a weekend, do your thing, and get them open. In the top right, you're going to see that there's silt and sediment in this gutter. Grit from your roof will often, I had to redo all of my gutters at my house because that fills in the smile sometimes, or the bottom of the down spout extension, and keeps the water from flowing. On the bottom right here, we have big gutters tied into a smaller downspout, and we see this quite often. So there's an adapter, and what's going on is you have maybe a 5 inch or a 4 inch gutter downspout going into a 3.5 inch discharge line. So what you want to do is keep in mind that the elbow is a bend, so it restricts it. We like to remove those when we're doing and go up onto the gutter with a hard PVC downspout adapter. And then your black pipe below, we want to make sure it's the same size or bigger than the gutter. So sometimes you may have to use electrical conduit or something along that line that's rigid PVC to get that water flowing away from your downspout. In the big picture here, we've got a lot going on. Engineering tries to show us that you can't necessarily have all the downspouts connected to the same discharge line, and we see this quite often. And we've learned this over the years with our different sump pumps and the discharge mechanisms that we're using to get this water away from the structure, that if you tie too many discharge lines in together, it actually hurts the flow. So not what we're wanting to do when we're trying to keep water out of our basement during a heavy rainstorm. The top right here, I don't know why this gutter was put here, but it was by a gutter guy. It actually immediately, not only does it have the bend in it and it's attached to an adapter, but it turns left immediately. And notice the discharge line is actually dropping that water right into the dig zone that was dug out when this home was built. So whether your home is 40 years old or 4 year old, like this home, that soil next to the foundation is often softer than the soil 10 or 12 feet away from your house because it was dug out to install the foundation, the basement, or the crawl space, whichever you have. So on the bottom right hand, you're going to see that there's a dip right next to the foundation, and this little bitty downspout kind of comes up. So you think that this would be okay because the downspout extension is not so long, and it's actually not. So you can tell that the water comes right back around and goes right back down to the basement or crawl space of this house. This is another example of a gutter. I think these steps have moved in this picture, and it's definitely a reason why. You've got a lot of elbows and you got a lot going on right here, but I don't know why they would come around the front of that house and let the water out there. This was a raised flower bed, which is kind of hard to see in the picture on the right. So that water probably would have benefited those plants more so than it's going to benefit. You do see a drainage at the bottom, that green drain tile. However, I don't think that it's significant enough. It should probably be an 8 or 9 inch, at least a 6 inch outlet in order to get that water away. So this homeowner is going to see some challenges in the future because water, when you own a home, and the is excessive water from your roof is not good for your foundation, and it stacks up against your basement walls. And on heavy rainstorms, you're going to see that water trying to come in. So what we're looking at here in the top right hand picture is we see the corrugated or perforated drain tile. And so we're going to do drainage work against our home. We don't need the slots, folks. We don't need the perforation. You want to get that water away from your foundation. And same is true on the left hand side. We got a lot going on. It's actually tied into some other downspouts and whatnot. It's definitely damaged, and you can definitely tell that this water not only is choked by an adapter from a big gutter to a smaller drain tile, but they actually took an adapter because they didn't know how to hook it up and then stuck it into a bigger pipe. And I guess in the essence of getting it done, we got it done. But the thing is, we actually choked the volume and the flow, even though we go into a bigger pipe. So just little things like that you want to be aware of. You want it super simple, one pipe, one discharge, and we don't want to kind of put a bunch of band-aids on one single pipe. You definitely don't want the perforation. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, we definitely don't want to see 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 90s on a gutter downspout extension. This is an evidence of water stacking up in the block in your basement, and this is what happens when that drainage water is next to your home. And so this is what we're trying to prevent, because the next thing that's going to happen is this water is going to seep in. This is example of when the walls continue to get wet over and over and over again because you've not maintained that discharge. So, like I said, a minimum, we want to stay 10 foot away. You do not have to go 40 foot away. The goal here is to keep the water from standing against the house and being soaked into the hollow cinder blocks of your basement, because that's going to make it moldy, mildew. You'll notice that in the top right hand corner, they've done a waterproofing application, but the water is on the positive side, the application is on the negative side. So basically, it started to peel because of the moisture that's maintained in the block level. So the right hand side in the bottom corner is an example of where that waterproofing was placed on the basement wall. And the problem is that the latex products, so it's growing mold and mildew. On the left hand side, these are unpainted blocks, but we still have discoloration because that shows you how often and the volume of water that is showing up at these basement blocks. So this slide is going to cover both. We're getting ready to move into looking at the grade, but I wanted to show you here. This is right next to a crawl space door. This is a crawl space that we did with a ginormous amount of water involved. But this downspout actually goes below grade and then comes back up, and they're absolutely not doing anything helping with getting the water away. It's a little easier to see in the two side pictures, but we want to be mindful of that. And you want your drain pipe to fall, folks. You want it to fall away from the house and get that water away from the house. I'm also showing you an adapter here. I'm not a fan. I like a 10-foot piece of pipe. I like an adapter, an elbow on the gutter. I like an adapter at the gutter, and I remove the elbow. So you got to dig a little more. You can't really cheat. It's got to be straight. You got to have the fall. We put an outlet at the end. That's exactly what you're going to want to do. One of the best things you can do for the help. There's probably not a better picture to explain what's going on if you don't get your grade right, but the same thing happens here. They have the adapter. They have the gutter. They did not remove the elbow, but you can tell where the water is going on here. It's going actually right back towards the house. So whether you have dirt under your gutter, this is just a good picture showing where that moisture is going. So some other gutters around this same structure, if you're looking to the right here, you're going to see the same thing happened all the way around the house. I guess it was quick and easy. There's not many options, and I get that. It may be something that you want to hire a professional to do. Sometimes we go under the sidewalk. Sometimes we cut the sidewalk. It's really good if you're paying attention at the construction time or if you're pouring a sidewalk time, because you can get that drainage away from the house. So These gutters have actually broken away from the house. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner picture, there's a lot going on here. They've got gutters that are draining. They're probably perforated. And anyway, they're right in that soft zone that we spoke about earlier. And so when it discharges this water, it's going to be discharging it right next to the house. That's not our goal. Our goal is to each gutter to have an independent discharge and go 10 feet away from our home. That's exactly what we're going to want to do. The second most common thing that I'm gonna see on a foundation, and usually someone with water coming into their basement, is the grading. So we do a lot of work on lake homes and homes with grades here, and we have hills in Kentucky. And so when that water's coming down, it's going to hit the side of that house and it's going to stack up against the basement wall, and then it's going to want to come in, especially during heavy thunderstorms, heavy rain, and snow seepage. So we did a waterproofing at the top of the hill, and this home had significant amount of water, and so we couldn't help but think. So I took a picture of this house at the bottom of the hill because they're definitely going to have problems because this grade is meeting the house. And so that's just an example, kind of what we're talking about. On the right hand side here, this is actually an entryway to a basement that maybe it was a garage. It was converted into a man cave at one time. Excellent space in the home, but they do have water problems. You'll see the erosion control socket they have on the right hand side here, and that's because on a heavy rain, this water gets started and it can't stop and it comes in through the bottom of the door. So they do have a sump pump at the bottom of this. However, they need a sump pump on the inside because the two systems are not attached. And they've actually called us twice over the years, two different homeowners, because this home tends to have problems. And that's another example of grade. It doesn't have to necessarily be dirt, it can also be concrete. In this photo, you're going to look at this hosta, which is this variegated white and green plant. It actually sits higher than the base of the foundation in this photo. So when this water is significant during a thunderstorm, it's actually moving towards the foundation. So some people try to fix it with level the rock and level the mulch, and they think that makes it level, but it's not. It's actually the dirt that's under the landscaping that will encourage the water to go towards your structure. It's not what you want to do. You want to build it up. You want to build it up pretty significant because you're going to have a little bit of settlement when the soil dries out and the air pockets release. So you want to build it up pretty good before you do some landscaping and redo your landscaping. If you'll notice in the top right, there's a picture there in the bottom right too, that there's a plant growing because it's happy because there's plenty of water there. So want to be very mindful of this. This is very, very, very common in landscapes in Kentucky. And or anywhere. I've seen it over and over and over again, and it definitely does not aid in the keeping the thunderstorm water away from your house. So we're going to always have water in our yards in Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. What we want to do is not add to the situation by channeling like aggressive rainwater and groundwater next to water table that we already have. So if you have a basement, you've always probably got a little bit of water around it. When we don't do our drainage work in our yard, or in this case, in the bottom right hand corner, you've got drainage and septic and a leach field all together. So you got to be mindful of these things that are happening with your home. But you want the water to drain. You want to try to get it away from your home. Do your drainage work. That'll do you a favor. If you'll see here, this HVAC unit, the ground beneath is actually washed out. It's no longer there. And you've got a downspout here. Again, it's a adapter that's smaller than the gutter. So this water is most likely coming around and going right back down. And you'll see the basement windows. And eventually, if that slab wasn't sitting next to that home, it would probably be pitched, which affects your HVAC performance and encourages water into your basement. The bottom right hand photo here, it's showing this is the same house, the one on top and the bottom. So if the grade hits the house, they have steel decking on the roof and they've not maintained their gutters. So they have these little saplings that are growing out, and that's going to hurt the flow to your gutter. So you're not getting the house away. So when that water tries, it's actually probably full enough and enough debris in that gutter that it actually rolls up and it ends up right beside the house. He has deflection. He has his wall actually pushed in. So it's pretty severe. One of the most severe I've ever seen. This photo here is showing you how that water actually stands in that block and how the mineral and the sediment in the clay soils will actually migrate through the block into the basement. On the right here, you'll see that there is a shear starting to form at the bottom of the wall where this hydrostatic pressure is pushing on this wall and it's about to push it in. And then the bottom right, you can see all the scaling and how these blocks stay very moist over the years. And you can see that they're starting to disintegrate structure wise. And so this is an outside entryway to a church basement, is what it was. And so they're gonna have some problems until they get that rainwater away from their structure. The parking lot is pitched to drain towards the back of the lot. The problem is the stairs are also located here, so it's another example of how the grade affects water and discharge away from the lot. Same church, they have some deflection going on the wall here. I've got my fingers to show you. It's hard to see, but the deflection. So this was the house that has the grade hitting, and then the gutters were not cleaned out. And there's another picture of how the gutters are not maintained on this structure. This is another crawl space that we did, and this grade also hits the house. Had a great crawl space, a lot of room to work in. She needed some jack work and whatnot done, but however, just had a lot of water that comes towards the house. And I think that sometimes people they had drainage work done and drainage work on top of the soil, on top of the ground to catch groundwater on top of the ground. But I think sometimes we forget that groundwater can move through the ground and hit the side of our crawl space or house, especially in this case if you have a tall basement, tall walls, it's more likely, and it may just be a fingerling spring that only happens when it rains. It may not be a live spring all the time, but when we have heavy water and coming down, water finds its Mother Nature tells it to go to the lowest spot, and that just may be your basement in severe weather. This is an example at the top right where this maybe the gutters aren't maintained here, maybe they're not cleaned out. She'd had some work done, but if you'll notice, because the gutters aren't cleaned out, the staining that are on there, and you can tell that that water comes down that valley and that eave because there's not like a splash protector and whatnot. Anyway, it comes over. Long story short, this is her basement. It was a nice basement. It was finished except for this one spot. This was the guest bedroom and also where the grandkids play. So it was very important to her not to have mold and mildew in this room. And if you'll notice, the corner of the bedpost is jacked up on bricks. So she's not achieved her goal here. If you look at the bottom right, that downspout looks like it's working and it looks like a good install. However, if you'll notice the dirt behind the downspout is washed away. And what that tells you is they've got backflow and then that drainage pipe is probably clogged and it's going to affect everything in that area, the slab, the basement, and whatnot. So looking for trouble here. Another example, this gutter does have a splash guard, but you can see the staining on your gutter. So you're going to want to pay attention. If you see heavy staining like that, that tells you that there's a situation going on there, that it may not be draining. And then also we have the eave again. And so sometimes when you have two roofs that meet at an eave, they get a running start on a heavy rain and that water will then come over at that junction. And you're going to want to pay attention to what's going on below because those are the areas that are going to fill up that water table next to your basement wall. These are basement windows. I've got a picture here in the bottom right. I'm wanting to show you we want to have good contact with our window wells next to our foundation and caulked with a waterproofing caulk, not silicone, something better than that. We've got water that came in at this basement on the top right. If you're going to notice bricks, we're the only thing there besides the wooden 2x4s, and bricks will not hold water and keep water out. This is probably not a project that we could waterproof. However, it looks like a waterproofing project. So the best thing they're gonna be able to do is try to keep all that drainage water away from those bricks, and hopefully you won't get stuck with a problem like this, but they're basically gonna have to put blocks on the bottom run, 2 or 3, and then stud up above that in order to do waterproofing. So if you don't have a block wall, you don't have concrete, brick won't do it. We've got mortar won't hold the water out. Now maybe the brick will, but the mortar lines won't, and they're usually stacked on top of the slab. So it looks good from the outside. It's not necessarily good from the inside. And this particular customer had water coming in through the stairwell in a very, very awkward spot. Couldn't figure out why. Anyway, cut the wall, take it away, and there you go. So there's your window well in the left corner. Just want to make sure they're tight and we don't have water coming in. This is a slab. So if your slab settled against your home or it's your driveway, you're going to see, like in the bottom right, that it can actually make the water come in through a window. So concrete counts too. It's not just the ground. You're going to have concrete cracks in the top right hand corner. Sometimes you'll see these during a heavy rainstorm. There's water under your basement slab at all times. If you take a metal bar and you do some pecking on there, you can hear the different sound, and that's usually where water has found a way to channel through and under the slab. But the picture here is showing where they've done concrete, they've done caulking, they've done several different things to try to keep water from coming through. And anyway, it's still coming through. So just some tidbits. The bottom right hand picture to the extreme. We're back to the basement in the church that we talked about. If you look in the background, you can actually see the water that's stacking in the wall because those places are moist. This is a support post on the right-hand side, and you can see how many times this basement has been wet over the years. So resting the support, which supports the main beam to the structure above, and in a church, that's pretty significant weight load. So want to be mindful of that. The sump pump here in the bottom left corner is has water on the sump pump lid. And so what's that showing us is that this sump pump cannot keep up with the capacity of water that's coming into this space. And it's pretty obvious because Right next to that sump pump is this cabinet that you see in the right-hand photo. So they've got everything pulled out. This thing's kinda leaning, it's rotting at the bottom, just over and over, just a very bad thing for a church. This is a space they could use for their small groups or their worship service, and it's almost as big as the church, but they can't use it because it stays wet. So we drove by and they did some work on the drainage and whatnot. I'm anxious to see if that's gonna work, and my guess they're gonna have to do more than they realize because of the way that the grade hits the parking lot. The parking lot hits the church, and so all that water comes through there on a big rainstorm or big snowstorm after a rainstorm, and then snow seepage and it melts, and anyway, you have water in your basement. Don't ever feel too proud. There's a lot of foundational waterproofing companies that offer free assessments. These guys are definitely worth your time. Treat them with respect, be nice to them. They are a wealth of information. They think like water because it's their job to keep this water away from the structure and to help you. So they're going to do their due diligence. They're going to look where they need to look in your basement, at your window wells, and they may find some areas that are vulnerable that you have not thought of. So take advantage of that. Use them and try to help you solve your waterproofing problem. In a lot of cases, you're going to need a couple of things that he recommends that you're not going to want to do, and they can help you with that part of the project. This is the battery backup system that you're seeing on the left hand side here. This is if your power goes back out or you don't have significant capacity or enough capacity in the sump pump that you're using, then you've got plan A and plan B and plan C. The power goes out, you don't have a generator or whatnot. You've got this battery backup system that'll run this third pump to get the water out of your basement because when the power goes out, it's usually during a storm. And so, very important, we maintain your sump pump system annually. We replace the check valves, very, very important to do that annually. Have your maintenance come out, the company's maintenance team come out, go through your system, double check it because during a heavy rainstorm, we don't want surprises. We want to make sure that we stay safe and dry. We have enough to deal with. If our power goes out, we're trying to feed our families. We're trying to stay comfortable, get the heat going. We don't want to have to unplug something from our generator to run our sump pump. So, battery backup, fresh check valve. In the top right hand corner, you're going to see a cord wrangler. Sometimes we see a cord that's wrangled up inside of a sump pump liner because maybe somebody's been down there messing around. You want to wrap that cord up. You want to make sure it's not hanging on the float switch to activate your sump pump. So these are things to look for if all of a sudden you're getting water at your sump pump entry point. Below that is a sump pump stand. You want to put your sump pumps in some cases on our triple pump system. I mean, we have two sump pump stand on the half horsepower motor, and we have one sump pump stand. So we want to keep it out of the grit. We want to keep it out of the dirt. We don't want this running through our pump acting like sandpaper. Very important here, we have floor valves. There's an array of these in the marketplace today. They used to be kind of hard to find. Dranger is one of them. It's a floor drain. This is another one that we have in-house. It kind of operates like a ping pong ball. It raises up and lets floor water down, and it won't let radon gases up. So we're hot for radon in southern Kentucky, well, this whole Kentucky state actually, but especially Warren County, where I'm from. This lets the water down. If you have a water heater and water's coming from the top and not coming from the groundwater seepage or the drainage channels that were installed for your waterproofing product, maybe if you're out of town and you have a leak, this thing's got you covered. It's going to let that water down, pitch that water out so you don't come home and you've got 3 foot water stains on your walls. There's an array of different waterproofing systems that can be installed. Some of them cover the wall, some of them cover under the slab. In some cases, you may have a two-stage waterproofing system if you have a monolithic slab. So we want to be very aware of these different stage systems that we have. But those are things that your professional inspector can help you out with. And if you're in Southern Kentucky or Middle Tennessee, feel free to give Foundation Solutions Group a call. We'll walk you through how to keep your basement dry during a heavy thunderstorm so that your contents don't get wet and you won't have to run your shop back. So that's it for today. Hope to see you next time. Thanks.